With me now, journalist and research advocate for Victims of Communism Memorial Foundation, Katarina Hall. Katarina, thanks for joining us today.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Katarina, General McMaster is absolutely right here. This election in Venezuela, not only was it a sham, it exposed once and for all, as if there were any doubt, and there was very little doubt, that this government in Venezuela has devolved into a dictatorship who will silence anyone who opposes them.
Yeah, the government right now, it's trying to oppose all of the opposition that's being right now. The opposition runs the General Assembly, and if the opposition gets turned down, then they will immediately be able to control everything. Maduro's government will be able to control the government, the constitution, the whole country, implementing whatever he wants.
Right, and this is not exactly a people's assembly, as he calls it. I mean, this new assembly that he seeks to establish, it includes his wife and his best friend.
Yeah, it'll mean that Maduro's government will be made up of Maduro supporters. The previous assembly, the National Assembly, which is run by the opposition, was elected in 2015 by the general vote. This election has nothing to do with the general vote.
Right, nothing at all. I mean, so many people, the majority of people actually sat out. I mean, in your opinion, are sanctions or economic sanctions the type that the United States is now levying on Venezuela, is that enough to turn Maduro back, or is he, too far over the tipping point?
Well, I think that they help. They're going to help Maduro tip over. The sanctions that the United States is implementing on the 13 leaders, the Venezuelan leaders that have to do with Maduro's government, that is probably going to make a difference, especially when countries like Mexico, Colombia, and Panama have followed those. And I'm not sure about the oil sanctions because that would actually, Trump hasn't implemented this yet. But if he does, this would actually hurt the people, and it would feed Maduro's narrative about, being anti-U.S. rhetoric.
Right. The thing about this whole situation, first of all, it's heartbreaking to see this incredible loss of life and this incredible violation of basic human rights here. But this is not a failed socialist state, Katarina. This is socialism. It took less than 20 years, 19 years, to devolve from what was supposed to be a progressive socialism into outright revolution. 19 years.
Yes. I mean, what happened in Venezuela is something that we've seen happen in many other communist countries. The problem was that in other communist countries, it was more taken by force. Here, it was kind of gradual, but it happened so fast. And you know what? What's been happening, property rights and businesses have been completely abolished. Democracy has been shattered. Human rights abuses have escalated. Opposition leaders have been taken away. I mean, just last night, 2 opposition leaders were taken from their homes. Their houses were raided. And one of them, Leopoldo Lopez, was just let go a couple months ago.
Right. It's absolutely shocking. And I think it's almost because of exactly what you said, that it was sort of the slow drip of socialism that led to communism. That should scare us here in the United States, because when we see Democratic politicians advocating for this democratic socialism, that's the first drips leading to something like this, something where a little girl, I just read a story about a little girl who had an infection, a basic infection that we would think no big deal here in the United States. Go get some antibiotics. She spent 3 months in the hospital and only lived because the mother of a boy who died donated her antibiotics. That is what happens in a socialist nation.
Yes, and we have to take into account the origins of the regime in Venezuela. We have to take into account that this is a regime supported by communist countries. When the Soviet Union was around, it was supported by it. Cuba is one of the biggest supporters of it. And, other socialist nations, or pseudo-socialism, what they call right now, like in Ecuador or in Bolivia, they're the ones supporting these organizations. And the rest of the countries in Latin America and the United States specifically have to be aware of that so it doesn't happen here too.